Feeling a little unsettled and stressed with the way things are in our world? Experience the peace of Jesus with Finding Peace, our 5-day devotional. Visit purposely.com to sign up. Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast. My name is Nathan Sutherland, and this podcast is dedicated to helping raise young people who love God and use tech. Today, we are joined by Jake Weidmann, a artist of high caliber, and I'm really excited to introduce you to some of his work today, as well as his process of connecting the hope of the gospel, this good news that we're sinners saved by grace, to a high caliber of artistic ability. So, Jake, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Nathan.
I have a lot of questions for you, Jake, because I'm not personally someone who would be considered like artistic in the classical sense, which you very much are. You are a master penman. You are an incredible woodworker, and you put out really high quality artistic pieces that could be recognized as such by just the passerby. Like, you don't have to be a student of the arts to recognize it. I think when I could you tell me a little bit about your journey of art, of how you came to walking faith explicitly with your artwork, and then I guess when you realized you're passionate about art and what that journey's looked like for you.
My journey into art started way back when I was a kid. You know, my parents always knew that if they couldn't find me, I'd probably be stowed away in my room somewhere, drawing or coloring away. And while it was like always my oldest companion, my best friend, you know, growing up, it was never something that I thought was going to be my main thing. And I thought that all the way up, through college. You know, I just swore, even though I got a lot of praise for my work, I received even some national awards in high school, I thought, I'm never going to make a living doing art. It's just too hard. You know, all stereotypes start somewhere, and there is such a thing called the starving artist, which I don't want to be. And so I thought I'd go into psychology but doing art therapy on the side, sort of specializing in that. And that was a way of, you know, keeping my passion alive alongside my vocation, because I specifically wanted to work with kids, and art therapy is an incredibly powerful mode of therapy to work with kids, because they have a hard time articulating abstract ideas like thoughts and feelings. Yeah. So a lot can come out in the process of a drawing that is both that helps in both the diagnostic and the therapeutic process. And so in order to become an art therapist, you actually have to have your degree in art. And so while I was getting my, majoring in psychology, I thought I could minor in art. And when I applied for an art minor at Biola University, where I went, I was actually rejected from their program. And that story is in the book. But I remember taking my portfolio in and, feeling pretty confident walking in, seeing especially like a lot of my friends who were in the art program, like, okay, like I think I could hold my own here. But then when I went in, the chair of the department at the time, he didn't make it halfway through my portfolio before he closed the book and slid it across the table to me and said, "I'm sorry, you're just wrong for our program." And so I thought that was sort of a confirming thing, like, yeah, I'm never going to be doing art as a living. And I've heard it from, someone higher up in the educational level. So therefore it must be true. And yet, God really used that rejection as my protection, because I didn't want to do either, abstract progression, or progressive, like abstract art, or digital art, graphic design. And those were really the only two options that were open to me in this modern program. I wanted to study the classics. I wanted to learn how to sculpt, how to carve. And I had this love for penmanship in particular that I had developed all my life. And so by the time I got to college, my handwriting looked ridiculous. I was always the last one to finish my essay tests, not because I didn't study the material, but because I was just focusing on the forms of my handwriting. And it was kind of funny. At one point, a professor of mine said, "Jake, your test looks like the Declaration of Independence."
Yeah.
And he says, "Do you mind if I hold on to this? Because it's just so beautiful." And but there was one day in cognitive psychology class where this girl was sitting next to me, and she leaned over at the end of class and she said, "Hey, I'm engaged to be married. I've been searching through a whole litany of different wedding calligraphers, and none of them have as good of writing as you do, just on your class notes. Is there any way that I can commission you to create my wedding invitation?" So I was like, "Okay, I have no idea. Like I can't even imagine where to start. I'm using a dip pen here. I love handwriting, but I said I'll do some research and I'll get back to you." And so that night I did, jumped on my computer and did a deep dive on the internet, trying to figure out the old ways that particularly script was written. And I stumbled across this one YouTube video of a master penman, John DeColobus, and he was writing with a dip pen and with white ink on black paper, which made it just all the more magical. And so when I saw this, it was like this beautiful form of script that was just dancing on the page. And it went from this hairline whisper of a stroke into this big, broad stroke. And all throughout this writing, it was gorgeous and fluid. And when I saw it, it was like seeing the woman I wanted to marry and knowing I would do anything to get her. It was like, that's what I wanted to be. And then I found, what it meant to be a master penman, this association. And so I pursued it with all that I had. And by 2011, I got my certificate as a master penman. And it was right at that time, too, that all of this sudden, this art career that I swore I would never do as a living, all of this sudden, the dominoes started falling into place. And God gave me the call into full-time artistry.
I would just have a question on the professor didn't allow you into the art program. Was there more explanation on that? Was it like clearly we don't have anything to teach you here, or did you ever get an explanation on how?
I mean, I think it was a real stylistic, difference. And I mean, he himself was an assemblage artist, which just means it's just, assemblage is just the French word for assemblage, but
Okay.
everything sounds better in French.
That's true.
And so he did, like, I still remember sitting in his office, like, as he's going through, and he had like this antique doll from the 50s that was nailed to a piece of barnwood. And then it had like other nails around it. And there was like this sort of string running all around the nails. And then wax just like had been drizzled over the whole thing. And that was his type of artwork. And so I was like, to each his own. It's not my particular milieu, but I thought maybe there would be an opportunity for me to learn something classic. But that was really what their program was geared toward. It was more, we were in California, we're in LA, so modern art kind of ruled the day during that time. And so I think that was it. I think there was just it was a stylistic change that it's like, and I do think he was right. I wasn't right for his program. And I found, this ability to be sort of the power of being self-taught and just discovering things on my own. I already had a passion enough for it, and I had been self-taught up to that point in all of my other art forms. So why not just continue on that way? Yeah. And every medium can be my professor, struggle was my tuition, trial and error was my curriculum. That is the school of the self-taught. And so that's what I did. And ironically enough, it was like that week or the very next week, I got asked to carve a set of moose antlers for another professor in a different department that was his two family crests that was sort of paired with the symbolism representing the Old and New Testament of the Bible, paralleling his family crest. So quite the commission, and it was the biggest I had ever received up to that point. So I was like, I was blown away. But because I didn't have studio time, I was actually carving these antlers on the balcony of our apartment. And if you've ever ground, bone, which is what antler is, it's very smelly. So I wasn't exactly popular with the ladies, at creating this cloud of dust around me on our balcony apartment. So but I was making art, and I was learning and getting paid for it. So
that is wild.
it was like, I know it's a little bit of like Sound of Music theology, but where God closed a door, he opened a window. He made an opportunity for me there.
There's real verses for that. I mean, it has more to do with temptation and such, but we're going to allow that thread to take hold, because I love what where your heart is in terms of seeing the Lord working in this. So you become a master penman, 2011. Which, can you walk us just through a little bit of what that means? Because I even had to research, like, all right, master penman, that sounds impressive, but like, it's actually significantly more impressive than I thought just from the title. What could you tell us a little bit about what that?
Yeah. So back during the golden age of penmanship, which was about from the end of the Civil War up until about the 1930s, there were many different colleges that were established where you could go and get your degree as a penman. Because a lot of associations and businesses at the time needed somebody who could write legibly, whether it was to keep the books or do certificate work or policy writing, all of that. You needed someone on hand who could write really well. But the ones who went above and beyond, the ones who took it from mere practicality into a true form of art, were regarded as master penmen. And I mean, they're such colorful characters in history that nobody knows about, but they're amazing. Like, there was one man, F.B. Courtney. He's one of my favorites, and he was nicknamed the Pen Wizard because what he did at the tip of a pen was sheer magic. He was ambidextrous. So in the middle of writing a word, he would change hands with the pen and finish it with the other hand. Or he could write a word upside down and backwards and then turn it around, and it was absolutely perfect. Yeah. Or when he taught class, he would fill a chalkboard with museum-worthy flourishing and script, and then at the end, sign his name simultaneously in opposite directions at the same time, as if he was conducting an orchestra. So he was amazing. Or there was Louis Mataraz, who was regarded as the king of penmen, and he created the serif script, which is actually what the Coca-Cola logo is. And so it's like, at the same time, it's like these great men are lost to history, but ever present. And that like really drew me into the art form, and it really drew me into this longer legacy of what it meant to become a master penman. And so today there's only a small association keeping the tradition of master penman alive. And so in order to become a master penman, you have to present a body of work to the other existing masters. You're invited in to have under an apprenticeship for a minimum of 1 year. And at the end of that year, you have to create your own certificate as your final test. And if it passes muster, it's signed and given back to you. So nothing is free in life, kids.
No, that is, I mean, the work you're doing, I mean, we are talking with what I would effectively call a fountain pen. I don't know if this is the correct term for the dip pens.
No, a fountain pen is definitely different than a dip pen. Okay. But yeah, this is something that goes, I mean, I'm trained to use a quill pen, which is actually a feather, typically a swan, goose, or turkey. That is cut in a particular way to achieve, different styles of writing. And then the dip pen really became during the golden age. It was, you had the advent of the steel pen nib, and that was put into a pen holder. So the nib was put into a pen holder, essentially the handle that you hold on to, and then you make repeated trips to an inkwell. And so a lot of the script forms that I do are a very sharp, pointed nib that is split right down the middle. And so as you glide across the surface of the paper, putting down no pressure, that's how you achieve the hairlines. And as you put pressure, the tines of the nibs split apart, and that's how you get the variation in line.
And what you managed to do, so you've recently published a book, which is wild. So title of your book, remind me the name of it though, because I have it. It's in the mail, literally. Like,
yes,
should be arriving tomorrow.
It's called Old Soul, New Creation, and the subtitle is Experiencing God Through a Life of Art and Faith.
Yeah. So listeners, please check out this book. What I got excited and the reason I purchased it is for my 3 children, but specifically my older 2. Jake, I mentioned I've got an 11-year-old, 9-year-old, Owen and Henry, and then Hadley is 6. And the older 2, one is hyper organized, focused, driven. The other is the most present human you've ever met. I mean, he's in the moment of every moment, and you cannot rush him if you try. And with both of them, I want them to see, like, sons. I already pulled up like pictures that just you have off your Instagram or just from your website of like boys, like this is done specifically with the pen work. It's like this is all pen work, and be it C.S. Lewis with a pipe blowing a lion, or your picture of Jesus with one line. Whereas like, let's zoom in and follow the line, boys. Like, watch how he makes the features on Jesus's face. Like, those are just bumps in the line. And just letting them see like a high level of excellence with a high level of creativity that's thematically recognizable. Like, they recognize the picture of Jesus as what it is, but then are like, oh, it's all one line. They're like, but what about that part? Like, still one line, buddy. But what about that? And like, so watching your high level of excellence, reading through the book, seeing the pictures, is inspirational and exciting on one level of just like, wow, I can't do that. I always appreciate watching what God's equipped people to do. But then it comes to, all right, for our children, when we point them towards excellence, my question for you would be like, all right, School of Hard Knocks, learning through failure. These are things I want from my kids. So first question is going to be, let's put it, second question is going to be, how do we help our kids learn to, I guess, process failure and learn from the School of Hard Knocks? But question number 1 is, as we point our children towards that, where do you draw the line between a focus on excellence and a focus on repetition? A focus on, I want to make sure this thing is good and excellent and praiseworthy, and a focus on like, but I'm going to need reps. Like, I'm going to need to make a lot of mistakes. How do we, because perfection, we always hear perfection is the enemy of growth, or of excellence. I mean, however you want to say it. So on the one hand, we want our kids to learn through failure. On the other hand, we want to do things really well. How do you draw the line there? And then how do we encourage our children to do the hard work of being bad at something before you can be good?
Wow. There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, I know.
I think, there's steering, you have to be really careful in the way that you want to jump on your kids' passions, because it's very easy as a parent to see them start to blossom and take off on something. But it's like, if you get on it too quickly, then or you take it too seriously, you're going to smother it. You'll smother it out. And I think it's really important, like, children already are in a state of play. And that's something that we should actually, we can learn from them is to learn how to play. And that's important for me, even at the height of my career, where I am right now, working on, high stakes, commission pieces. I still have to remind myself, like, it's important for me to be at play, because if I'm not at play, then I'm not enjoying the work. And then the work actually shows up in that way. So I think, there's a level of of walking towards excellence and encouraging excellence, not fearing away, like shying away from it, but like stirring them onto it in that perspective of play. Because at that point, failure is, it's all part of the game. And, it's like, it's not win or lose. It's win or learn. And then when you learn from it, it's like, it gives you the opportunity to grow. And then it's not this sticking point in the middle of the road where all of this sudden you're on this path, but boom, this big failure is blocked in your way. Yeah. And this is true in my own work. And it's really important that my kids, like, they see, like, a true master is not one who doesn't make mistakes. It's a true master is one who learns to always fix their mistakes and to come back to them, to actually work them out. I mean, some of the art pieces that I've done where there's been a mistake or something that I've done, and that causes me to lean into that piece, to work harder on that portion. And ironically enough, it's usually the part that, like, when I'm finished, like, people say, I love what you did right there. And, it's like, it becomes like the hallmark of the piece. Yeah. And here was our mistakes. And I think that there's an element of the gospel in that God makes mastery of our foibles, that he has the ability to step into those, to step into our sinfulness and use what the enemy intended for evil for our good. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, there's not going to be this blind eye turned to the possibility of mistake making. No, we're actually going to lean into that. And we're going to know that as we walk into that, there is an immense amount of grace, that we have that ability to walk in, to be at play, and to learn at every step. That, you're not that it's just going to be one more opportunity that draws you further up and further into the experience that you were called.
It's a little last battle collab there on that thought.
Yeah, well, old Jack sneaks his way in for sure.
Anytime there's a chance to reference Lewis, please do. Yeah, I love that. And so then that would extend to, how do we support play in a digital age specifically? I mean, this whole podcast is around raising healthy youth, tech world. Like, we want them to use the best tech well, but much of our tech, in my own personal experience with some of my testimonies, I was a compulsive gamer up until my mid-20s. When I went from compulsive gamer to just can't play them. I don't have a dial, I have a switch. So one of the tricky parts with games is they are made by talented people with incredible storylines with lots of just amazing immersive learning. Most video games are all about, like, how does the game work? How's this world work? How the physics works? Like, how can I tinker with this world and make it do what I want, whether it's Minecraft, Roblox, World of Warcraft, whatever it might be. And yet the problem for the consumer of that creative process is a lot of it is passive. You're delivered the experience, you're delivered the course, you're delivered the adventure, you're delivered the skill set. You get to feel successful with very little investment other than showing up, which most of your show up time is reward-based, dopamine overwhelming inputs. So how do we help young people raised in a digital world where fun is often consumption to take the opportunity for fun to be creative?
Creation. Yeah. And I, being newer to your podcast, I don't know if I'm going to be petting the cat in the wrong direction and ruffling some fur to say this, but I would encourage people to encourage kids, parents with their kids, to pursue something that is truly analog, that is really tactile, and to step out of the digital world. I think that is really important, especially when we're inundated with technology. It's very important to step out of it. And being a master penman, the association that I am a part of, it's got a very long name. It's the International Association of Master Penmen, Engrossers, and Teachers of Handwriting. And Teachers of Handwriting was that last portion that was added on in like the, I believe it was the late 70s and 80s, when they noticed a major degrade at that time to the discipline of handwriting. And I actually have an entire TED Talk that I gave now 11 years ago on the importance of handwriting in the 21st century. But in psychology, we actually studied the importance of writing by hand for the formation of the brain. Because when you write by hand, when you're using your fingers to actually create all of the different anatomy of the letters, not only do you learn it quicker that way, because you're involving more of your body in the learning process, not just your head, but you're also able to recognize that word when you see it on the page. And cursive handwriting is proven to create even more connections within the brain, because you're connecting one letter to another, which creates a stronger connection of those letters which gives them a deeper understanding of spelling and how those words or how those letters form together to create words. And it also helps in revealing things like dysgraphia, the flipping of letters, or dyslexia. So it's like those things come out when you're actually using analog tools, but they're hidden away when you're just using technology. Because when you're on an iPad or when you're typing on a computer, there's no tactile difference between the keys. And so those same areas of the brain are not being activated. You're not linking back to those language portions of the brain. And so I think it's no wonder that, out of the top 40 countries in the world, we've ranked 40th for our education level. And so I think there has to be a return, and there is right now. At the time that I gave my speech, that was 11 years ago, 41 out of 50 states no longer required cursive handwriting as a part of their curriculum. Some states don't do it at all. It's a send home packet with the parents, and which means it's probably not going to get done. And so I think there is a rethinking of how critical it is, these analog ways of learning, and integrating our learning process with the whole body, not just, from the neck up. Which is really important to the formation of learning. So I find that it's critical for learning, not just in writing, but also that exploratory aspect of their creativity, to have that kind of spatial awareness. I too have a son named Henry, and it's really fascinating to me that he calls himself an engineer already, and he builds things out of Scotch tape, string, safety pins, anything he can find in our junk drawer. And I say, Henry, you have Magna blocks, you have Legos, you have Lincoln Logs, you have all these different things that are made to build. And he made this statement that really struck a chord with me. He goes, yeah, but I want to build in a way that nobody else has. And I think that is so powerful, because when we immerse our kids into the tech, they're existing within the confines of someone else's creativity.
Yeah.
But it's like when you sort of strip that all away, you provide opportunity for them to explore, that less is more, because now the possibilities are endless.
Yeah. I love that you're stuck within the confines of other people's creativity. And I think that nails and align what I was trying to explain with video games. And I think your son, Henry, found that as well. And yes, on this podcast, we talk a lot about analog adventures. So you pet the cat the right direction. That there are these ways we can explore God's creation in ways that inspire awe and allow for creativity. And this is something, with Owen, Henry, Hadley, seeing them each wired differently, but this is something Ann and I are hungry to do, which is provide them opportunities to explore their own limits. And then I do find, the reason I ask is because I find they'll run into a roadblock, and sometimes there's just a path of least resistance. This is fine. And I'm going to go do this other thing, either least resistance because I'm already good at it. So I know I can be successful over here. Or I don't want to push through that problem. So I'm going to just move on to something new because it's exciting when it's new. And that I got to a hard part, and I am actively walking through with the older two specifically, because Hadley's just happy to, play for her 7 minutes and then run on to the next thing or go heckle a brother. But the older two, I'm I can see areas of strength and, God-given giftings. And I do want to speak that into life and give you opportunities. And you said specifically, don't jump on it too quick. You'll smother it. I'm ooh, I'm the kind of dad that could definitely smother it with my own enthusiasm. I love hearing that reminder of there's an amount of that is a spiritual process. This is you and the Lord working it out. And there's going to be an amount of this. It's just you're going to push through the hard stuff because the Lord's giving you good work to do. And then, you get a choice. You get to be a co-worker in some of this work.
And that's where I found my daughter, for instance, has an unbelievable passion for cursive handwriting now. She's in the first grade. She actually won her school-wide cursive handwriting contest, which, as a master penman father, just warms my heart.
Yeah. The
But
cockles of your heart are warmed. Yes.
yeah, exactly. But she sees it, she's around it, but it's like I haven't done too much direct learning at this time.
Yeah.
And at the time or direct teaching, where I have, like, when I have tried very quickly, and I've been, I'm pricked to it because I have that in the back of my mind that I don't want to smother her passion.
Yeah.
Because it's like she wants to have the freedom to explore, and that's just going to be natural for her. So I found that, like, when I try and do that, she sort of shies away or she gets less interested.
Yeah.
But if I go get my dip pen and I work on my own writing right next to her,
Yeah.
all of this sudden, it's like we're doing sort of, in psychology they call it like parallel play, but I think there's opportunities where the values are more caught than taught in that scenario, because she's looking over my shoulder and she's seeing the way that I hold my pen, and I don't have to tell her how to hold hers. She's figuring that out. It's right there for her to compare. And there we have this beautiful father-daughter relationship, just getting immersed in our own creativity right next to each other. And the process is instructive enough.
Yeah, I love that. So, okay. In kind of wrapping this conversation up, I do need to ask, for those of us that are not explicitly talented at art. So, full disclosure, I almost failed sixth grade because of penmanship. And it was not, and this is not a joke. I tried really hard, and the teacher just thought because I was a goofy kid. She just thought I was blowing it off. And so, like,
sure,
I did all of my work multiple times. I literally, the only reason I passed was because she made a deal with my parents. It was a Christian school. She said, if he can memorize a chapter out of the Bible and do it in an assembly, I'll give him a passing grade for penmanship, which was a requirement for sixth grade.
Nice.
And so I memorized Ephesians 4 and did it, because it turns out I'm weirdly good at public speaking, but I'm terrible at penmanship. So you have someone who has a distinct deficit artistically. How can we all work on being creative where the Lord has given us with the skills we've got? Like, how can we grow? What tools, tips, encouragements do you have for either the parents who are like, yeah, it's not my cup of tea. Like, I don't read poetry or paint paintings or work with, you haven't mentioned much about your woodwork other than the moose antlers, but I've seen some of your woodwork, like the swan cradle that you made for your children. Like, you're really high level. Where can some of us begin if this is just something we want to start to walk with our kids and just seeing what takes off with them?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's really important to expand our whole idea of what creativity is, and that it's going to manifest itself very different in each person. And so, you might not think of yourself as artistic, but in my mind, that's entirely beside the point. You are still creative. Yeah. And so it might be in it might be in the way that you engineer a building. It might be in the way that you solve math problems. It might be in the way, as parents, we cultivate our home and raise our kids. That same creative capacity is animated in you whenever you set to create anything. And so I think that's a critical first thing. And so to be looking for it when it comes to actual parenting is like to have sort of this, this very careful, like, attentive watchfulness as to how that is going to manifest in your kid and how to encourage them where they are at. And I have to credit my own parents very much to this score, because they, my dad is not, he's not artistic at all. He was an offensive lineman, captain of his football team at the Air Force Academy. He flew C-130s, and he has handwriting that would make a chicken blush. I mean, he is not artistic at all, but every single time, like, I grew up and I showed him a picture, he goes, "Jake, that is just incredible." He goes, "I have no idea how you did that." Yeah. But it's just, and that was so affirming to me that he would just compliment me and say like, all right, well, that's okay, Jake. How about we go outside and throw the ball,
Yeah.
And you don't like try and steer them into your passion. You find what they're passionate about and you lift that up. You fan that into flame. I think is really important. And so it's a part of being a good parent. It's a part of knowing your child well. And just learning, like whatever, when they get into something, like learn alongside them, not for the sake of automatically putting yourself over them to be their teacher, but to be their fellow traveler, to be interested in what they're interested in. And in so doing, I think it's one of the best ways you love your kid.
Yeah. Well, Jake, thank you for taking time for this conversation. So listeners, Jake Weidmann has a new book. It's Old Soul, New Creation, correct?
Yes.
So you can find it on Amazon. Where can they find more about you, your work, your wife's work? Hannah has her own ministry of creative efforts. Where can people find more about you both and your work and your ministry?
Yeah, jakeweidmann.com is sort of the hub where you can find all of those things from my online gallery. You can also get, we just started offering signed copies of the book, so you can get them there too. And then we have links to another business that my wife and I started back in 2018, which is essentially taking a lot of my same approach towards art and distilling them down into jewelry for women. And so there are links to that as well on my website at jakeweidmann.com.
And that's WEIDMANN.
NN. Yep.
UNs. Thank you.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and then they can find you, I know, Instagram at least, Jake Weidmann, and then Hannah Weidmann as well.
Yep, absolutely. Hannah she sort of runs all the social media and that's a good kind of chronicles the whole process. I'm carving a massive family crest right now that's like 5 feet tall. It's out of 20 different pieces of wood. And so you can follow along with that journey in real time.
Yeah, please do, everyone. And look at the pen work he did to lay out what's going to be happening with the wood. Jake, thank you again for your time, for your creative and faithful efforts, and for helping us connect what the Lord has wired us to do with the opportunities He's given us in daily life. Look forward to seeing where you continue to go in your work.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Nathan.
Are you looking for a distinctly Christian education? A place where your child can be challenged with academic rigor through a biblical worldview? Consider King's Schools.
Hi, my name is Michaela, and I'm a proud student of King's Schools graduating class of 2025. Being a King's Knight has made a significant impact on my faith and future. Next year, I will be studying at Northwest University in their honors program. Because of King's Schools, I grew so much in my faith and my relationship with God. If you're considering enrolling at King's Schools next year, my advice would be to go for it. The community and environment here were amazing for me, and I love it here. And you will too.
Sign up for a tour of King's Schools by June 30th, and if you enroll, mention purposely and pay no application fee. Visit gokings.org for more. Building resilient disciples of Christ through Christian education for 75 years. gokings.org.